Have you ever stood before something magnificent and felt like you understood it completely? Like you had all the pieces of the puzzle figured out? Well, prepare to have everything you thought you knew turned upside down. Because in 2025, scientists made a discovery so shocking, so fundamentally earth-shattering, that it's forcing us to rewrite one of history's greatest mysteries. For over a century, we've gazed up at the ancient stone terraces of Machu Picchu, perched impossibly high in the Peruvian Andes, and we thought we had it all figured out. A royal retreat for the Inca emperor. A sacred astronomical observatory, maybe even a secret fortress hidden in the clouds. Neat, tidy explanations that satisfied our need to categorize and understand. But here's the thing about assumptions: they're dangerous. They blind us to possibilities we never imagined. And when it comes to Machu Picchu, we've been blind for 500 years. What I'm about to share with you will fundamentally change how you see this wonder of the world. Because it turns out the Inca didn't choose this treacherous, impossible location despite its challenges. They chose it because of a secret that's been hiding beneath our feet this entire time. A secret so profound that when researchers finally uncovered it, they realized we've been asking the wrong questions all along. This is Baffling Tales, and I'm about to take you on a journey that will shatter everything you thought you knew about one of the world's most mysterious places. By the end of this story, you'll understand why Machu Picchu isn't just an architectural marvel. It's something far more extraordinary than we ever imagined. But first, let me paint you a picture of just how baffling this place really is. Picture this. You're standing on a narrow ridge of rock, nearly 8,000 feet above sea level. The air is thin, your lungs are working overtime, and on either side of you, sheer cliffs drop away into nothingness. Below, almost 2,000 feet down, a river churns through the valley like a serpent made of foam and fury. The nearest major settlement is miles away, connected by no roads, no highways, nothing but treacherous mountain paths that would challenge even the most experienced climber. This is where the Inca decided to build one of their most elaborate cities. Not in a fertile valley, not near a major trade route, not somewhere logical and practical. Here, in what can only be described as one of the most impractical locations imaginable. When explorer Hiram Bingham first laid eyes on Machu Picchu in 1911, he didn't just discover ruins. He discovered a riddle wrapped in an enigma, shrouded in complete bewilderment. Here was a city that defied every principle of common sense. A place so remote, so isolated, so utterly challenging to reach that it boggled the mind why anyone would choose to build there. Think about it logically. If you were going to construct a city, where would you put it? Somewhere with access to water, obviously. Somewhere with fertile soil for growing food. Somewhere connected to trade routes and other settlements. Somewhere that didn't require hauling every single building stone up impossibly steep mountain paths. Machu Picchu had none of these advantages. Zero. It was like the Inca looked at all the sensible places to build a city and said, "Nah, let's pick the most ridiculously difficult spot we can find." The challenges were staggering. Every piece of granite used in construction had to be quarried, shaped, and somehow transported to this aerial perch. We're talking about blocks of stone weighing several tons each, moved without wheels, without pulleys, without any of the mechanical advantages we'd consider essential today. The logistics alone should have made this project impossible. And yet, here it stands, perfectly preserved, breathtakingly beautiful, utterly inexplicable. For decades, historians and archaeologists have thrown theory after theory at this mystery. Maybe it was Pachacuti's personal vacation home, they said, a place where the Inca emperor could escape the pressures of ruling an empire. But why choose such an inconvenient location for relaxation? Why not build somewhere a little more, accessible. Others suggested it was an astronomical observatory. The Inca were brilliant astronomers after all, and the high altitude would certainly provide clear views of the stars. But again, there were plenty of high places that didn't require such extraordinary engineering challenges. Then came the military theories. Perhaps Machu Picchu was a secret fortress, they argued. Its remote location would make it nearly impossible for enemies to find or attack. This made more sense, but it raised other questions. If it was meant to be hidden, why make it so elaborate? Why spend enormous resources on decorative stonework and ceremonial spaces? The religious theories followed. Maybe it was a sacred pilgrimage site connected to ancient spiritual beliefs about mountains and sky gods. The Inca did consider certain peaks to be sacred, dwelling places of powerful spirits. But even this explanation felt incomplete. Why this particular mountain? What made it special enough to justify such an enormous undertaking? Each theory had merit, but each theory also had holes, big, gaping holes, that left crucial questions unanswered. It was like trying to complete a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. You could see glimpses of the bigger picture, but something fundamental was always just out of reach. The problem with all these theories was that they started from the same flawed assumption. They all assumed the Inca chose this location despite its obvious disadvantages. They were trying to explain why the Inca would make their lives so much harder than they needed to be, why they would willingly burden themselves with such extraordinary logistical challenges. But what if that assumption was wrong? What if the location wasn't a burden at all? What if there were advantages to this site that we simply couldn't see? This is where our story takes a dramatic turn, because in 2025, a team of researchers decided to stop looking at Machu Picchu from the surface and start looking beneath it. They brought with them an arsenal of cutting-edge technology that would have seemed like magic to previous generations of archaeologists. Ground-penetrating radar that could see through solid rock. Satellite imagery so detailed it could detect features invisible to the naked eye. Electrical sensors that could map underground water sources. And most incredibly of all, muon tomography, a technique that uses cosmic particles to create three-dimensional maps of what lies hidden inside mountains. What they found changed everything. Beneath the terraces and temples, beneath the carefully fitted stones and ceremonial plazas, they discovered something that had been there all along, invisible to previous investigators. A hidden network that explained not just why the Inca chose this impossible location, but why they had no choice at all. The mountain itself was the key. Not the mountain as we see it from the outside, but the mountain as it truly exists beneath the surface. A complex, interconnected system that offered advantages so valuable, so irreplaceable, that no other location could possibly have served the same purpose. For the first time in over a century, we weren't just guessing about Machu Picchu's purpose, we were seeing it, understanding it, realizing that the Inca weren't defying nature by building here. They were working in perfect harmony with it. The discovery was so significant that it didn't just solve the mystery of Machu Picchu's location. It revealed a completely different way of understanding Inca engineering and architecture. An approach so sophisticated, so in tune with the natural world, that it puts our modern building practices to shame. But here's what makes this discovery even more remarkable. Once researchers knew what to look for, they started seeing the same patterns everywhere, not just at Machu Picchu, but at dozens of other Inca sites across the Andes. What they thought was a unique mystery turned out to be part of a vast, empire-wide strategy that had been hidden in plain sight for 500 years. The Inca weren't just master builders, they were master listeners. They possessed a deep, intuitive understanding of the earth itself, reading signals and patterns that we're only now beginning to detect with our most advanced technology. This wasn't primitive superstition or lucky guesswork. This was science. Earth science embedded so deeply into their culture that it became invisible to outsiders, a form of geological wisdom that guided every major decision about where to build, how to build, and why to build. And at Machu Picchu, this wisdom reached its absolute pinnacle. What the researchers found beneath Machu Picchu wasn't just revolutionary, it was mind-bending. Picture this: two massive fault systems, invisible to the naked eye, crossing directly beneath the city like a giant underground X, one running northeast to southwest, the other cutting northwest to southeast, meeting right at the heart of where the Inca had decided to build their most sacred structures. Now, if you're thinking that sounds like a recipe for disaster, you're not alone. Most of us would run screaming from building anything on top of intersecting geological fault lines. But here's where the Inca's genius becomes apparent. They weren't avoiding these fractures, they were seeking them out. The breakthrough came when the research team started mapping these underground features with unprecedented precision. Using muon tomography, they could literally see inside the mountain, tracking cosmic particles as they passed through different densities of rock. What emerged was a three-dimensional map that looked like nothing anyone had expected. The fault lines weren't random cracks in the earth. They formed a perfectly organized network, a natural grid system that the Inca had somehow detected and used as the foundation for their entire city layout. Every major building, every plaza, every ceremonial structure was positioned to align with these hidden fractures. It was like discovering that someone had built a house by following the invisible wiring inside the walls. Except the Inca had done this 500 years ago, without any of our modern detection equipment. But here's where it gets really wild. These weren't just any fault lines. They were active, living systems that had been shaping this landscape for millions of years. The constant geological pressure along these fractures had done something extraordinary. It had pre-cut the mountain's granite into perfectly manageable building blocks. Think about that for a moment. The Inca didn't have to quarry solid rock and somehow break it down into usable stones. The mountain had already done that work for them. The tectonic forces moving along these fault lines had fractured the granite along natural planes, creating stones that were already the right size and shape for construction. Some of these blocks had even broken along geometric angles that seemed almost too perfect to be natural. They fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle that the earth itself had designed. The Inca weren't fighting against the mountain to build their city. They were accepting a gift that had been millions of years in the making. This explained something that had puzzled archaeologists for decades. How did the Inca achieve such precise stonework without metal tools? How did they cut granite blocks so perfectly that you couldn't slip a knife blade between them? The answer was that they didn't cut them at all. They selected them. They were master stone pickers, not stone cutters. But the geological advantages didn't stop there. Those same fault lines that had fractured the granite were also doing something else. They were channeling water. High in the Andes, water is life. Without a reliable source, no settlement can survive. The Inca needed to find a location that could provide fresh water year-round, not just during the rainy season, and these fault lines were delivering exactly that. The fractures acted like hidden aqueducts, collecting rainwater and snowmelt from the surrounding peaks and channeling it through underground pathways directly to the building site. Right near the city center, this underground river emerged as a natural spring, providing fresh water exactly where it was needed most. This wasn't a lucky coincidence. The Inca had located and followed these water sources up the mountainside, tracking them to their intersection point. They had found the one spot where multiple underground streams converged, ensuring a permanent water supply that could support a significant population. The precision of their water management system was staggering. They built a canal system stretching over 2,000 feet, feeding 16 fountains in perfect sequence. The first fountain was reserved for the emperor himself, with each subsequent fountain serving different levels of society. But the source of all this water was the mountain's own hidden plumbing system, tapped at exactly the right point. And then there was the drainage. Machu Picchu sits in one of the wettest parts of the Andes Mountains, receiving almost 6 feet of rain every year. On steep slopes, that much water should spell disaster. It should create landslides, erosion, and structural collapse. But the Inca had turned this challenge into another advantage. They used the same fractured bedrock as a natural drainage system, creating underground channels that could handle enormous amounts of water without compromising the city's stability. They layered crushed stone, gravel, and sand beneath every structure, creating a filtering system that prevented water from pooling or undermining the foundations. Here's the truly remarkable part. Archaeological estimates suggest that 60% of the construction effort at Machu Picchu went underground. 60%. Most of the work wasn't visible to visitors then or now. It was hidden beneath the surface, creating an invisible infrastructure that has kept the city stable for over 5 centuries. This wasn't just clever engineering. This was a complete reimagining of how to build in harmony with natural forces. While other civilizations were trying to dominate their environment, the Inca were learning to dance with it. The implications of this discovery reach far beyond Machu Picchu itself. Once researchers understood what they were looking for, they began finding the same patterns throughout the Inca Empire. Site after site revealed the same geological fingerprints, intersecting fault lines, underground water sources, and natural building materials all concentrated in specific locations. This wasn't random luck repeated dozens of times. This was a systematic approach to site selection that spanned thousands of miles and hundreds of years. The Inca had developed what we might call geological intelligence, a deep understanding of how the Earth's hidden systems could be harnessed for human purposes. They possessed knowledge that we're only now rediscovering with our most advanced technology. They could read the landscape like a book, interpreting subtle signs that revealed where water flowed underground, where stone could be most easily quarried, and where the earth itself provided natural advantages. This geological wisdom was passed down through generations, embedded in their culture through oral tradition, religious practices, and hands-on experience. Young engineers learned not just how to build, but where to build. They developed an intuitive sense for reading the Earth's hidden patterns, but there was another dimension to this knowledge, one that reveals the true sophistication of Inca thinking. They didn't separate the practical from the spiritual. In their worldview, the geological advantages of a site weren't just convenient resources to be exploited. They were sacred gifts from living mountains. The Inca believed that mountains were Apu, powerful spiritual beings with their own consciousness and will. A mountain that provided fresh water, stable foundations, and ready-made building stones wasn't just a useful location. It was a divine partner offering its cooperation in creating something magnificent. This meant that choosing a site like Machu Picchu wasn't just an engineering decision. It was a spiritual one. The Inca were entering into a sacred relationship with the mountain itself, accepting its gifts while promising to honor and respect its power. Every stone they laid was both a technical choice and an act of reverence. Every fountain they carved was both a water source and an offering. Every terrace they built was both agricultural space and a gesture of gratitude toward the living earth. This perspective changes everything about how we understand Machu Picchu. It wasn't conquered from nature. It was created in partnership with nature. The city represents the highest achievement of a civilization that had learned to listen to the earth and respond to what it was offering. When you start to see Machu Picchu through this lens, something extraordinary happens. You begin to notice details that were always there but never made sense before. The way certain walls curved to follow invisible contours, the placement of windows that frame specific mountain peaks, the positioning of ceremonial stones that seem to pulse with an energy you can't quite explain. These weren't decorative choices made by architects trying to create something pretty. They were functional elements designed to work with forces we're only now beginning to understand. The Inca were building according to a blueprint written by the earth itself. But here's where this story takes an even more fascinating turn. The geological discovery at Machu Picchu has opened up an entirely new field of study. Researchers are now going back to dozens of other Inca sites, armed with the same advanced technology that revealed the hidden secrets beneath the famous citadel. What they're finding is blowing their minds. Site after site shows the same geological fingerprints, the same intersection of fault lines, the same underground water sources, the same natural quarrying advantages. It's like discovering that an entire civilization was built according to a secret map that we never knew existed. Take Ollantaytambo, for instance. This massive fortress complex about 30 miles from Machu Picchu had always puzzled archaeologists. Why build such an elaborate structure in what seemed like a random valley location? The new geological surveys revealed the answer. Beneath Ollantaytambo lies another intersection of major fault systems, another convergence of underground water sources, another natural granite quarry prefract consider Pisac, perured by millions of years of tectonic activity, orched on seemingly impossible cliff faces high above the sacred valley. Ground-penetrating radar showed that those cliffs aren't solid rock at all. They're honeycombed with natural fractures that provided both building materials and defensive advantages. The Inca weren't defying gravity by building there. They were using the mountain's own structural weaknesses as their foundation. The pattern repeats across the entire empire. Sacsayhuaman, the massive fortress overlooking Cusco, sits on a geological nexus where three separate fault systems converge. Choqquequirao, often called the sister city to Machu Picchu, occupies another intersection of underground water channels and natural stone resources. What emerges is a picture of an empire that wasn't just built on the landscape. It was built with the landscape. The Inca had developed a form of geological intelligence so sophisticated that they could identify optimal building sites across thousands of miles of mountain terrain. This wasn't guesswork or superstition. This was applied earth science at a level that puts our modern site selection methods to shame. While we rely on expensive surveys and drilling operations, the Inca could read the signs written on the surface and understand what lay beneath. They noticed that certain types of vegetation grew only where underground water was present. They observed how morning mist patterns revealed hidden springs. They understood that specific rock formations indicated particular types of geological activity below ground. Most remarkably, they learned to follow water sources backward, tracing streams and springs to their underground origins. By tracking these hidden rivers through the mountain, they could locate the exact points where multiple water sources converged. These convergence points became the hearts of their greatest cities. This geological wisdom was encoded into their culture in ways we're only now beginning to appreciate. Their religious ceremonies often took place at sites with specific geological characteristics. Their agricultural terraces were positioned to take advantage of underground water flows. Even their road system followed geological features that provided the most stable foundations. But perhaps the most stunning aspect of this discovery is what it reveals about Inca engineering philosophy. We tend to think of engineering as a battle against natural forces. We build dams to hold back rivers. We blast through mountains to create tunnels. We fight against the environment to impose our will upon it. The Inca took the opposite approach. They saw engineering as a collaboration with natural forces. Instead of fighting against geological activity, they harnessed it. Instead of ignoring underground water systems, they tapped into them. Instead of clearing away natural rock formations, they incorporated them into their designs. This philosophy produced structures that weren't just built to last decades or centuries. They were built to last millennia. While European castles crumble and modern buildings require constant maintenance, Inca stonework has survived 500 years of earthquakes, floods, and weathering with minimal damage. The secret wasn't superior materials or advanced tools. The secret was understanding how to work with the forces that shaped the landscape in the first place. By building along natural fault lines instead of across them, by following underground water flows instead of blocking them, by using pre-fractured stone instead of quarrying solid rock, the Inca created structures that moved with the earth rather than against it. This approach required a level of geological knowledge that we're only now achieving with satellite imagery and computer modeling. The Inca accomplished it through generations of careful observation, trial and error, and accumulated wisdom passed down through their oral traditions. They developed what we might call an ethnological approach to engineering. Their understanding of the earth wasn't separated from their understanding of culture, spirituality, and daily life. Geological knowledge was woven into their language, their ceremonies, their agricultural practices, and their architectural traditions. Young Inca engineers didn't just learn how to cut stone and build walls. They learned how to read the landscape, how to interpret the subtle signs that revealed where water flowed underground, where the earth was most stable, and where natural resources could be found. This holistic approach to engineering produced results that continue to amaze modern experts. When major earthquakes strike the Andes region today, Inca structures often emerge with less damage than modern buildings constructed with steel and concrete. The 1950 earthquake that devastated Cusco left most colonial and modern buildings in ruins, but the Inca walls remained standing. The 2007 earthquake in southern Peru toppled churches and government buildings while leaving nearby Inca stonework virtually untouched. This isn't luck or coincidence. This is the result of building practices that were designed from the ground up to work in harmony with seismic activity. By following natural fault lines and using construction techniques that allowed controlled movement, the Inca created structures that could flex and adapt to geological forces instead of resisting them. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond archaeology and history. As our modern world grapples with climate change, natural disasters, and environmental degradation, the Inca approach offers a radically different model for how human civilization can coexist with natural systems. Instead of viewing the environment as something to be conquered and controlled, we might learn to see it as a partner in creating sustainable communities. Instead of fighting against natural forces, we might discover ways to harness them for human benefit. The geological intelligence that guided Inca site selection could inform modern urban planning. The water management systems that kept Machu Picchu supplied with fresh water for centuries could inspire new approaches to sustainable architecture. The building techniques that allowed Inca structures to survive repeated earthquakes could revolutionize seismic engineering. But perhaps most importantly, the Inca example challenges our fundamental assumptions about the relationship between human intelligence and natural systems. We tend to think that advanced technology means greater separation from the natural world. The more sophisticated our tools become, the more we insulate ourselves from direct contact with environmental forces. The Inca achieved technological mastery through deeper integration with natural systems. Their most advanced engineering projects were also their most environmentally harmonious. They didn't need to separate themselves from nature to build magnificent cities. They needed to understand nature more completely. This perspective shift has profound implications for how we approach modern challenges. Instead of asking how we can use technology to dominate natural systems, We might ask how we can use technology to understand and cooperate with them more effectively. The advanced sensors and imaging techniques that revealed the geological secrets of Machu Picchu could help us identify similar opportunities in our own building projects. We could learn to read the landscape with the same sophistication that the Inca developed through generations of careful observation. We could design cities that work with underground water systems instead of disrupting them. We could position buildings to take advantage of natural geological features instead of ignoring them. We could create infrastructure that enhances environmental stability instead of undermining it. The Inca didn't just build Machu Picchu. They created a model for how human civilization can achieve greatness through partnership with the natural world. 500 years later, we're finally beginning to understand just how advanced that model really was. And that understanding is forcing us to confront some uncomfortable questions about our own approach to progress and development. But what if everything we consider progress is actually taking us backward? What if our modern obsession with conquering nature has blinded us to solutions that were perfected centuries ago? This brings us to the most unsettling part of the Machu Picchu revelation. Because while we're celebrating this incredible discovery, we're simultaneously witnessing something that should terrify every person who cares about human achievement and environmental harmony. The very sites that reveal this ancient geological wisdom are under attack, not from earthquakes or natural disasters, but from something far more destructive. Us. Deep sea mining operations are targeting the same types of geological formations that the Inca recognized as sacred and scientifically valuable. Mining companies are ripping apart fault line systems that took millions of years to develop, destroying underground water networks that could teach us revolutionary approaches to sustainable engineering. We're essentially taking a sledgehammer to the Earth's instruction manual. Think about the irony here. We've just discovered that an ancient civilization achieved engineering mastery by learning to read and work with geological systems. Their greatest monuments were built by understanding and cooperating with the Earth's hidden processes. And our response? We're systematically destroying those same processes in pursuit of rare earth minerals and industrial materials. It's like finding the lost Library of Alexandria and immediately setting it on fire to heat our coffee. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone in the Pacific Ocean, where scientists recently discovered rocks producing oxygen in total darkness, is now being targeted for massive mining operations. These geological formations, which could hold keys to understanding how life itself began, are being viewed as nothing more than sources of nickel and cobalt for our smartphones and electric car batteries. We're trading geological wisdom that took millions of years to develop for consumer electronics that we'll replace in 2 years. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. The same fault line systems that the Inca used to create stable, earthquake-resistant structures are being destabilized by modern mining and drilling operations. We're not just losing potential knowledge. We're actively undermining the geological stability that could protect us from natural disasters. Recent seismic activity in regions where deep mining operations intersect with ancient fault systems has increased dramatically. We're essentially performing surgery on the Earth's support structure without understanding how the pieces fit together. The Inca knew better. They understood that geological systems were interconnected webs of cause and effect. Disturb one element, and you create ripple effects throughout the entire network. They built their civilization by working within these systems, not by dismantling them, and their approach worked for centuries. Machu Picchu has survived longer than most modern cities will ever exist. The stones are still perfectly fitted. The water systems still function. The terraces still prevent erosion. 500 years of earthquakes, floods, and climate variations haven't been able to destroy what the Inca built in harmony with geological forces. Meanwhile, modern buildings constructed with our most advanced materials and techniques often start showing serious problems within decades. We're so focused on short-term functionality that we've forgotten how to build things that last. This isn't just about construction techniques. This is about fundamentally different approaches to understanding our relationship with the planet we live on. The Inca saw the Earth as a living partner in their engineering projects. They believed that mountains had consciousness, that water systems had spiritual significance, that geological formations were sacred manifestations of deeper truths about how the universe operates. We see the Earth as a collection of resources to be extracted, processed, and consumed as efficiently as possible. We treat geological formations as obstacles to overcome rather than systems to understand and work with. The results speak for themselves. Inca engineering has lasted 5 centuries and counting. Our engineering requires constant maintenance, frequent replacement, and generates enormous environmental costs in the process. But there's something even deeper going on here. Something that reveals the true significance of what we've discovered at Machu Picchu. The geological intelligence that guided Inca construction wasn't just about building techniques. It was about a completely different way of understanding what intelligence itself means. We tend to think of intelligence as the ability to impose our will on the environment around us. The smarter we become, the more control we can exert over natural systems. Intelligence means domination, manipulation, and the transformation of raw materials into human-designed objects. The Inca demonstrated a different kind of intelligence, one based on listening, observing, and finding ways to cooperate with systems that were already functioning perfectly. They didn't try to impose their will on the mountain. They tried to understand what the mountain was offering and find ways to accept that gift gracefully. This required a form of intelligence that we've largely forgotten how to cultivate. The ability to perceive patterns that aren't immediately obvious. The patience to observe natural systems over long periods of time. The humility to recognize that some problems have already been solved by processes that are far more sophisticated than anything humans could design. The Inca engineers who selected the site for Machu Picchu weren't just clever builders. They were master listeners. They could hear what the mountain was telling them about water sources, stone quality, and structural stability. They could read geological signals that remained invisible to trained archaeologists for over a century. This kind of intelligence can't be programmed into computers or taught through direct textbooks. It develops sustained contact with natural systems. It requires the kind of patient observation that our fast-paced, technology-driven culture actively discourages, and that might be the most important lesson that Machu Picchu has to teach us. We've become so focused on developing artificial intelligence that mimics human thinking patterns that we've forgotten about developing human intelligence that can perceive natural patterns. We're trying to create machines that can solve problems faster than we can, while ignoring solutions that nature has already perfected over millions of years. The fault line systems beneath Machu Picchu represent millions of years of geological problem solving. The mountain had already figured out how to manage water flow, how to create stable foundations, how to provide building materials exactly where they were needed. The Inca didn't have to invent these solutions. They just had to be smart enough to recognize and work with them. But recognizing those solutions required a type of intelligence that we're rapidly losing. The ability to slow down, pay attention, and perceive subtle relationships between different elements of natural systems. This intelligence isn't just useful for construction projects. It's essential for addressing the major challenges facing our modern world. Climate change, for instance, isn't just about reducing carbon emissions. It's about understanding how human activities interact with complex environmental systems that we're only beginning to comprehend. The same that guided Inca engineering geological intelligence could help us identify ways to work with natural climate regulation systems instead of disrupting them. Water, Scarcity isn't just about finding new sources or improving distribution efficiency. It's about understanding how water moves through underground systems over long periods of time. The Inca water management techniques that kept Machu Picchu supplied with fresh water for centuries could inform modern approaches to sustainable water use. Natural disaster resilience isn't just about building stronger structures. It's about understanding how to position communities and design infrastructure that works with seismic and weather patterns instead of fighting against them. But developing this kind of intelligence requires us to fundamentally change how we approach learning and problem solving. Instead of focusing exclusively on human-designed technologies, we need to become students of natural systems that have been testing and refining solutions for millions of years. The researchers who finally understood the geological secrets of Machu Picchu didn't just use advanced technology. They used advanced technology to help them see what the Inca had perceived through careful observation and accumulated wisdom. Their high-tech sensors revealed patterns that were always there, waiting to be noticed by anyone with the patience and skill to look for them. The technology didn't create the solutions. It just made visible the solutions that the Earth had already developed. This suggests a different approach to technological development. Instead of trying to replace natural intelligence with artificial intelligence, we could focus on using technology to enhance our ability to perceive and work with natural intelligence. Imagine if our cities were planned using the same geological wisdom that guided Inca site selection. Imagine if our water systems patterns, instead of disrupting them, were designed to work with underground flow. Imagine if our buildings were positioned to take advantage of natural structural features instead of ignoring them. We have the technology to make this possible. We have sensors that can map underground water systems with incredible precision. We have imaging techniques that can reveal geological structures invisible to previous generations. We have computer modeling capabilities that can help us understand how different natural systems interact with each other. What we lack is the wisdom to use these tools in service of natural intelligence instead of trying to replace it. The discovery at Machu Picchu offers us a roadmap for developing that wisdom. It shows us what becomes possible when human intelligence learns to work in partnership with the intelligence already embedded in natural systems. But it also reveals how much we have to lose if we continue on our current path of treating the Earth as nothing more than a collection of resources to be extracted and consumed. The geological formations that enabled Inca engineering mastery are finite resources. Once they're disrupted by mining operations, they can't be restored. The fault line systems that provided natural quarrying advantages took millions of years to develop. The underground water networks that supplied ancient cities with fresh water represent irreplaceable natural infrastructure. We're essentially strip mining the Earth's geological intelligence in pursuit of materials that we could probably find less destructive ways to obtain. This isn't just an environmental issue. This is an intelligence issue. We're destroying information systems that could teach us revolutionary approaches to engineering, architecture, and community planning. The Inca didn't just build Machu Picchu. They discovered a methodology for creating human settlements that enhance environmental stability instead of undermining it. They developed techniques for reading natural patterns that could help us address modern challenges in ways we haven't even imagined yet. But that methodology can only be learned through direct study of the geological systems that made it possible. Once those systems are destroyed, the knowledge goes with them. This is why the 2025 discovery at Machu Picchu isn't just archaeologically significant. It's urgently relevant to our immediate future. We're at a crossroads where we have to choose between two fundamentally different approaches to intelligence and progress. We can continue developing technologies that allow us to extract, control, and manipulate natural systems more efficiently. This path leads to greater short-term power, but ultimately undermines the natural intelligence that sustains life on Earth. Or we can learn to develop technologies that help us perceive, understand, and cooperate with natural intelligence more effectively. This path requires more humility and patience, but it leads to solutions that can last for centuries instead of decades. The choice we make will determine not just the fate of places like Machu Picchu, but the kind of civilization we leave for future generations. Will we be remembered as the generation that finally understood the geological wisdom of ancient cultures, or as the generation that destroyed that wisdom in pursuit of temporary advantages? The answer depends on what we do with the knowledge we've just gained, because understanding the secret of Machu Picchu is just the beginning. The real question is whether we're wise enough to learn from it. And that wisdom starts with recognizing something that should terrify every person who understands what we've just uncovered. Because while scientists are celebrating this revolutionary discovery, something sinister is happening beneath our feet. Something that threatens to destroy not just Machu Picchu's secrets, but the entire foundation of geological intelligence that took millions of years to develop. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in zones remarkably similar to the fault systems under Machu Picchu, massive industrial operations are ripping apart the seafloor with mechanical precision. These aren't small-scale research projects. These are billion-dollar mining ventures targeting the exact same types of geological formations that enabled Inca engineering mastery. The polymetallic nodules scattered across the ocean floor aren't just valuable for their rare earth elements. They're part of complex geological networks that mirror the fault systems beneath ancient Inca cities. They represent millions of years of geological processes creating natural batteries, water channels, and structural foundations that we're only now beginning to understand. And we're destroying them at an unprecedented rate. Think about the implications here. The same geological intelligence that guided the construction of humanity's most enduring monuments is being systematically dismantled in pursuit of materials for devices that will be obsolete within years. We're trading geological wisdom that sustained civilizations for centuries for smartphone components that we'll discard when the next model comes out. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. The mining operations aren't just targeting individual sites. They're disrupting entire networks of interconnected geological systems. When you damage one fault line, you create instabilities that ripple through connected fracture systems hundreds of miles away. The Inca understood this interconnectedness intuitively. They knew that disturbing one element of a geological network could have consequences throughout the entire system. That's why their construction methods were designed to work with existing fractures instead of creating new ones. Modern mining operations show no such restraint. They're essentially performing surgery on the Earth's nervous system without understanding how the different components communicate with each other. Recent seismic data from regions where deep-sea mining intersects with ancient fault systems shows alarming increases in geological instability. Areas that had remained stable for centuries are now experiencing unprecedented levels of seismic activity. We're not just losing archaeological treasures. We're actively destabilizing the geological foundations that protect us from natural disasters. And the most chilling part? The companies conducting these operations have access to the same advanced geological mapping technology that revealed Machu Picchu's secrets. They know exactly what they're destroying. They can see the fault networks, the water systems, the natural structural features that took millions of years to develop. They're making a calculated decision that short-term profits are more valuable than geological intelligence that could revolutionize how human civilization interacts with the natural world. This isn't just corporate greed. This is a fundamental failure of imagination. We're so locked into thinking about the Earth as a collection of resources to be extracted that we can't see it as a source of solutions to be learned from. The fault systems beneath Machu Picchu aren't just interesting archaeological curiosities. They're blueprints for sustainable engineering that could help us build cities capable of surviving climate change, earthquake activity, and resource scarcity. The underground water networks that supplied Inca settlements for centuries aren't just historical footnotes. They're models for water management systems that could address modern drought and flooding challenges. The natural quarrying processes that provided pre-cut building stones aren't just convenient coincidences. They're examples of how geological forces can be harnessed for construction without the massive environmental costs of modern mining operations. But learning from these systems requires leaving them intact long enough to study them properly. And that's exactly what we're not doing. Instead, we're racing to dismantle geological formations as quickly as possible, treating them like inconvenient obstacles standing between us and the materials we need for our technological ambitions. This approach reveals something deeply troubling about our relationship with intelligence itself. We've become so obsessed with creating artificial intelligence that mimics human thinking that we've forgotten about learning from natural intelligence that surpasses human capabilities. The geological processes that created the fault systems beneath Machu Picchu represent millions of years of problem solving. The mountain had already figured out optimal solutions for water management, structural stability, and resource distribution. These weren't random accidents. These were the results of countless trials and refinements over geological timescales. The Inca didn't need to invent these solutions from scratch. They just needed to be smart enough to recognize and work with solutions that had already been perfected. But recognizing those solutions required a type of intelligence that our education systems actively discourage: the ability to observe natural patterns over long periods, the patience to listen to what environmental systems are communicating, the humility to accept that some problems have already been solved more elegantly than anything humans could design. We're so focused on developing technologies that can process information faster than human brains that we've ignored the possibility of developing human intelligence that can perceive information that machines can't detect. The Inca engineers who selected Machu Picchu's location weren't using primitive guesswork. They were applying a form of intelligence so sophisticated that it took us over a century and our most advanced technology to understand what they had accomplished. They could read geological signals that remained invisible to trained scientists using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar. They could perceive relationships between underground water systems, fault line networks, and surface features that our computer models are only now beginning to map. This wasn't luck or accident. This was the result of intelligence that had been trained through generations of direct contact with natural systems. And that intelligence is exactly what we're losing as we become more dependent on technological intermediaries to interpret the world around us. We're creating a generation of people who can manipulate digital interfaces with incredible skill, but can't read basic weather patterns from cloud formations, who can process vast amounts of data but can't perceive the subtle environmental signals that indicate changes in underground water systems. We're becoming technologically sophisticated and ecologically illiterate at the same time. This illiteracy isn't just an academic problem, it's a survival issue. The major challenges facing our civilization, climate change, resource depletion, natural disaster resilience, require the same kind of geological intelligence that guided Inca engineering. We need to learn how to read natural patterns that reveal where water flows underground. We need to understand how to position communities and infrastructure to work with seismic activity instead of being destroyed by it. We need to develop construction techniques that enhance environmental stability instead of undermining it. The solutions exist. They're written in the geological formations that the Inca learned to read like instruction manuals. But accessing those solutions requires developing the same kind of patient, observational intelligence that our fast-paced, technology-driven culture actively prevents, and time is running out. Every day that passes, more geological formation networks are being disrupted by mining operations, urban development, and industrial projects that treat the Earth's structural systems as expendable obstacles. We're essentially burning down libraries that contain information we haven't learned to read yet. But here's the thing that gives me hope. The same technology that's being used to destroy geological formations can be used to study and learn from them. The sensors and imaging systems that guide mining operations could guide conservation and research efforts instead. We have the tools to map underground water systems with incredible precision. We have the computational power to model how different geological networks interact over long periods. We have the communication technology to share discoveries and coordinate protection efforts across international boundaries. What we lack is the wisdom to prioritize learning from natural intelligence over exploiting natural resources. The discovery at Machu Picchu proves that this wisdom is possible to develop. The Inca achieved technological mastery not by separating themselves from natural systems, but by integrating more deeply with them. Their greatest engineering achievements were also their most environmentally harmonious projects. They didn't need to choose between technological advancement and ecological sustainability. They found ways to achieve both simultaneously. This offers a radically different model for how our own civilization could develop. Instead of viewing environmental protection as an obstacle to progress, we could learn to see environmental understanding as the foundation of true progress. Instead of treating natural systems as resources to be consumed, we could treat them as teachers, offering lessons in sustainable engineering, water management, and community planning. Instead of using technology to dominate and manipulate natural systems, we could use effectively. The Inca proved technology to perceive and cooperate with natural intelligence moored that this approach can produce structures that last for centuries while enhancing rather than degrading their environmental context. Their cities survived longer than most modern buildings will ever exist, and they did it without generating the massive environmental costs associated with contemporary construction. But learning from their example requires making some fundamental changes in how we think about intelligence, progress, and our relationship with the planet we live on. It requires developing the patience to observe natural patterns over long periods instead of demanding immediate results. It requires cultivating the humility to recognize that some problems have already been solved more elegantly than anything we could design from scratch. Most importantly, it requires protecting the geological formations and natural systems that contain this intelligence while we still have the chance to learn from them. Because once they're gone forever. And with them goes knowledge that could have helped our civilization navigate the challenges ahead with the same wisdom and sustainability that enabled the Inca to build monuments that still inspire wonder 5 centuries later. The choice is ours. We can continue on our current path of treating the Earth as a collection of resources to be extracted as quickly as possible. Or we can learn to see it as a source of intelligence that could guide us toward solutions we haven't even imagined yet. The secret of Machu Picchu isn't just about understanding the past. It's about choosing what kind of future we want to create. And that choice starts with recognizing that the real treasure isn't the gold the Spanish conquistadors were looking for. It's the geological wisdom that enabled an entire civilization to live in harmony with forces that we're still learning to understand. The question is, are we wise enough to protect and learn from that treasure before it's too late? Because the mountain is still talking. The fault lines are still carrying water. The geological networks are still offering their ancient gifts. But they won't wait for us forever. And once we've destroyed them in pursuit of temporary advantages, no amount of technology will be able to bring back the intelligence they represented. The time to listen is now. The time to learn is now. The time to change our approach is now. Because Machu Picchu isn't just a monument to what ancient civilizations could achieve. It's a blueprint for what our own civilization could become, if we're brave enough to follow where the mountain leads. So here we are, standing at the edge of one of the most profound discoveries in archaeological history. What started as a simple question about why the Inca chose such an impossible location has become something far more significant. A revelation that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient intelligence, modern progress, and our relationship with the planet we call home. The 2025 breakthrough at Machu Picchu didn't just solve a 500-year-old mystery. It revealed that we've been asking the wrong questions all along. The Inca weren't defying nature by building in the clouds. They were listening to secrets that the mountain itself had been whispering for millions of years. Secrets written in fault lines and flowing through underground rivers. Secrets that we're only now learning to hear with our most advanced technology. But perhaps the most baffling part of this entire story isn't what the Inca accomplished 5 centuries ago. It's what we're choosing to do with this knowledge today. We've discovered a blueprint for building civilizations that can last millennia while working in perfect harmony with natural forces. And yet, at this very moment, we're systematically destroying the geological intelligence that made such achievements possible. The real question isn't whether Machu Picchu was a royal retreat or a sacred observatory. The real question is whether we're wise enough to learn from the mountain's teachings before we silence its voice forever. Because the same forces that pre-cut stones and channeled water for the Inca are still at work beneath our feet, still offering their ancient gifts, still waiting for us to develop the intelligence to accept them. The choice is ours. We can continue treating the earth as a resource to be consumed, or we can learn to see it as a teacher offering solutions we've barely begun to imagine. Machu Picchu stands as proof that another way is possible. The question is whether we'll choose to follow where the mountain leads,